Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on reducing workplace stress through effective communication. If you're new to us, we are Grace and Hope Consulting. We are a small business who is very intentional about promoting well-being and belonging for all, one individual and one organization at a time. We provide multiple services to support people in the workplace and beyond. And some of those services include professional development, leadership training, career coaching, diversity, equity, and inclusion training and consultations. And we do all of those things through a trauma-informed lens. And so for that reason, we provide trauma-informed care training and consultation as well. And we are very intentional in making sure that people are doing well and being well. And so emotional wellness coaching is also provided for those reasons. Like I just mentioned a few seconds ago, we were here to help you be well, do well, and work well. So a little bit about me, who am I? I'm Shua Allegra. I'm the founder and CEO of Grace Note Consulting. I've been serving people in different capacity for the past 23 years. I'm a certified leadership trainer. I'm a certified leadership trainer, speaker, and coach, also certified in DEI. I help individuals do well at work and support their supervisors as they lead and support them. So I'm also certified in employee performance coaching, emotional intelligence coaching. And again, we do all of this from a trauma-informed lens. And for that reason, I am certified. I went ahead and completed this certification to be a certified trauma competent professional. So enough about me. Let's get right into what we're here for. But before that, I want to just touch base on why this is important. And this statistic here on my screen definitely underscores the crucial role that effective communications play in fostering a healthy work environment and minimizing stress level among employees and staff in the workplace. So this stat here is from American Institute of Stress, and based on the research they did, they found out that 46% of employees cite lack of communication as the top reason for workplace stress. Wow, that's about half of people in the workplace. And I often say these are these stats often are an understatement, if you want, of what reality actually is, because many people don't report those things for fear of retaliation, fear of what will happen or how people will see or perceive it. So when there's not enough psychological safety in the workplace, which is something else that that we support people around, often issues are not addressed and that they're not even shared, mentioned. So for that reason, they're not addressed. So these 46%, I guarantee you, it's definitely higher than that. And these are just the people who felt safe enough to share. And based on my work with individuals in the workplace, I also noticed that often when people talk about lack of communication, it's not just lack of communication, meaning sometimes there is communication that's just not effective. So that's not what I want you to keep in mind. So that's why we're here, right? We're here to help you reduce stress in the workplace by looking through communication, effective communication, and how that can actually help you and your team. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to look at some common communication issues in the workplace, how it impacts teams, and then we'll discuss some effective solutions for you. So let's go right in. The first common workplace communication issue here is often poor clarity. I can't tell you how many times I've heard clients say, and I've witnessed it myself as well, when we get messages that are unclear, very ambiguous, right? And then we're not sure what people mean, whether it's through an email, through even verbally, what people are communicating to us. We find ourselves, but sometimes we forget vague instructions, and then we're not sure, okay, what am I supposed to do next, right? I got something, they told me what to do, but it's still not clear. Anyone been there? Probably all of us. And sometimes we get this confusing announcement. So it's, the company, the organization takes the initiative to communicate, and then the message is still very confusing. Where people, I read that memo. Do you know what they mean by that? What time is it going to meeting's going to be at? Where is it going to be at? Because things are just confusing. So it's not always lack of communication. Sometimes it's just the message is not clear enough. right? And that leads to many interpretations, right? When there's lack of clarity, people start interpreting it the way, however they think, whatever they think the message means. And when there is poor interpretation, there's definitely poor implementation of whatever that message was. Right. So really, 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 want to, to emphasize that it's important to have the clear communication, and that, encouraging clarity in our communication, providing very specific instructions. And it's okay to ask people, follow up with them and say, hey, how, do you have any questions, right? This is, if you're the one at the receiving end, getting a message that's ambiguous, that's very vague, it's okay to come and ask some questions, right? Hey, I thought you sent this, you said this, is this what you mean? Well, based on what you said, this is what I'm planning to do. Is this what you intended, you expected, right? It's okay to come, to ask those questions, and definitely have, using multiple channels can be effective if, again, they're clear, right? And using that to reinforce your message per se. So, and also the next common communication challenge that people see in the workplace is lack of feedback. And sometimes there are places, and then this might not be your workplace. So, and if it's not your workplace, this is good. But many times, people only give feedback when it's, like an annual review. It's some very standard uh, process, which is good, but it's great to actually be able to give feedback often. So when people, not only back to the unclear message and vague message, if we're giving feedback and it's not clear, that's even worse, right? It's more confusing, more stressful, and then leads to many more challenges, again. So now just waiting for the annual feedback, annual review to give people feedback. And people need that regular feedback, because when we don't have that, people feel uncertain. They don't know if what they did well and what they didn't do well. And also just waiting for something to go wrong to give feedback, it's also not effective, because then people, every time we approach people, honestly, that create fear, and creates a lack of psychological safety, where they assume that every time you're going to talk to them because they did something wrong. And I've had clients who will say, oh, every time I get an email, a message from my supervisor saying, scheduling a meeting, I'm already feeling like, ooh, now I have to go to the principal's office. That is not good. That is not good. So give feedback. I encourage you to give feedback when things are going well. Give feedback when things need to improve, and be consistent in that feedback, in a sense where if someone did know, I'll just give a name, Paula did project A and implement it in a certain way. In the quarter one, the approach was great, it worked well, and you're like, yeah, awesome, this works well. And when we get to quarter two, the employee does the exact same thing, and not all of a sudden things are not to your liking per se. That is very confusing. And granted, sometimes things might have changed, right? The goals might have changed, or maybe we got new information that requires us to tweak things a certain way in order to be more effective. But again, if we did not communicate that to the rest of our team previously, because it was not clear, right? People did what people implement the way they thought the way they thought it should be done. Then coming back with feedback that's inconsistent based on what we heard before can be very, very confusing. Again, leading to more stress for the person who is at the receiving end, but also more frustration for you, the person who might be giving that feedback, right? So definitely encourage you to be consistent in that feedback, and not waiting for just standard procedures, if you want, a process of doing that. Because when we just wait for the annual review, employees might feel neglected, and feel unsupported throughout the year. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that many of my clients, many of the people who are supporting the workplace, come because they don't feel supported in the workplace. That's a very, very common issue. And so if we kind of implement a culture, a workplace culture of continuous feedback, where managers and peers, provide constructive feedback on a regular basis, that's healthy. And this can be facilitated for like one-on-one meetings, feedback sessions. Sometimes we're just using different digital platforms, to give that feedback. Quick email, a quick, if the company already has a process to do that, and on a regular basis, that's even better. So another one of the challenges, is common barriers, communication barriers. Yes. And because I do the work that I do, I get to witness a lot of things that, are challenging for people in the workplace, but also that often are very preventable, very, very preventable and workable as well. So yes, we're all about promoting diversity, but we also acknowledge that with workplace diversity, it can bring, valuable perspectives, and we love that. But it can also introduce barriers, due to differences in language, differences in culture, differences in communication styles, and sometimes a misunderstanding might just arise between team members from different cultural backgrounds because they have varying norms per se regarding directness, how to address something, and how to be assertive. Different cultures define that differently, right? So yes, it's good to foster, to be inclusive, to foster that inclusion in the workplace by promoting that awareness and by being sensitive to the people we're working with. And often, again, these things can be avoided because it takes, just like it takes time to get to know people, outside of work, right? People that you get to spend time with, people that you might call friends. It also takes time to get to know people in the workplace. And I know that work is not always the place that people come to look for friends, but if we are not understanding who we are, how we communicate, it can actually lead to a lot of tension and frustration for everyone instead of fostering that team building, teamwork, and cohesion in the workplace. And with communication style, that's something that we work with clients a lot. Where, just knowing how you communicate, so that and how others on your team communicate. There's definitely a lot of exercises that we do, assessments even that we do with teams to get to start to build that self-awareness, and then that team building. I remember working with a leader, actually, a leader in a federal agency who was great with his team, and his team enjoy and like, really enjoy how he communicated. And they'll say, no, he's very relatable. We can connect with him. He gets us. And then he's higher up, though the people that he reported to had some concerns about his communication, and they actually wanted him to get more training, more support, to be able to be, quote unquote, more professional, and professional in his communication. So again, the environment that you're part of, even the circle that you are part of in the workplace, sometimes also dictate, if you want, how you communicate, or what communication styles that you take. So it's good to know yourself. And this is not about losing who we are, because when we do that, that's also not healthy. But it's finding a balance between who am I, how do I communicate, and then how do others communicate? How can we connect, right? Because often people communicate but not always connect. And then that's the bigger problem as well. So it's not always for not I mean, when we talk about language differences, it could be different, mainly from languages, but also just we could speak the same language, use the same exact word, but mean something totally different. That actually just happened earlier today. I was supporting a team, and one person said one word, the other person understood it one way and did something totally different than what the initial person who stated that word was expecting, right? So it's good to start getting to know who you work with, and then following up with those questions about, I heard this, is this what you meant? Or when you're saying something and you can sense that someone is feeling uncomfortable or feeling a little lost in translation, for lack of a better term. It's okay to re-explain what you said, and even ask them if they understood what you're saying, or if they need, in another way, they need more support in implementing what you said. So messages can get lost in translation even when we're speaking the same language. Another one of those common challenges, communication challenges, is information overload. Yes, we really live in this digital age. Employees, all of us are inundated with emails, messages, notifications, right? And it makes it very, very, very challenging to even prioritize or digest information, effectively, right? So then what happened is some important messages get lost in the shuffle of the noise, if more the digital noise, right, that exists in the inbox, for example, per se. And then we overlook things that are important to us altogether. Often I hear people who my clients when they come back from vacation, for example, they come back from a sick day or a long weekend, and they get overwhelmed by the amount of emails and voice messages that they missed when they were away, and like, oh my goodness, I can't keep up with all of this is a lot. Yes, it's a lot. I often encourage my clients to actually plan for an admin day or clerical day when they come back from vacation. So let's say you're going to be off work Friday, Thursday, Friday, coming back Monday. Maybe on Monday, try not to schedule too many meetings. Monday can be your day just to catch up on emails, catch up on your voice messages, follow up on what maybe was not completed before you left, so that when Tuesday come, you feel a little more, top of your game per se, and you can pick up on where you left off before you took the time off, instead of coming and trying to, you know, play catch up with what you missed, and picking up from where you left off, and it just becomes very stressful as well. So those endless emails we get, we all been there. So be intentional, right, about planning your time. I also have clients who sometimes during the week they actually plan for a day where they're actually just maybe working on reports, a day where that's when they, maybe throughout the week, they might pick 2 or 3 days where that's when they get caught up on all the voice messages per se, the calls. But I know some calls might be urgent, so they attend to those. Some emails might be urgent, but some of the ones that can wait, they sometimes block time during their day to do that. That can be a way to manage that a little better, so it kind of reduces your stress. And we all probably been part of teams where we have multiple meetings that for the exact same thing, and then it's good. Having meetings is not a bad thing, but they have to be effective. So if we're doing meetings that are very redundant, we're not just wasting time but also frustrating our team. And then it could they just the start drowning, if you want, the noise. It's still sounding just like noise, instead of being important information that we need to take into heart. So definitely, using calendars, using different project management platforms, and different communication apps to kind of help you centralize if you want your information and declutter, reduce your digital clutter is very important, right? Sometimes I do this myself with the things I need to get back to people about. I'll schedule on my calendar. I'll block time my calendar to do that, just so that I don't forget. If there is a project, that's coming up, maybe it's even 2 months from now, I want to schedule that time on my calendar, knowing put that deadline there. And usually I schedule maybe 2 or 3 days, in advance, sometime in a week in advance, depending how big of a project it is, so that I have more time to catch up in case things happen, because life will happen, right? The things that come up in the workplace that we didn't plan for, and then like, oh my goodness, I had this to do and I can't do it because X, Y, and Z happened. So definitely, be intentional about reducing the information overload, as the person providing the information, but also as the person receiving the information, so that you can be you can be well at work. So I really encourage you to be brief when you can, as brief as you can, be clear in your messages, and minimize the information you're sending. So short and sweet it goes a long way. So there's another common communication challenge is those silos that we have, the silos that we might have in the workplace, can then lead to this what I call information hoarding, right? So it happens in the workplace where people been there for a long time. Maybe they actually got hired in the same time, went for orientation the same time, so they kind of bond that way, right? And maybe someone else, no, so they have different things in common, right? We talk about affinity bias, where people might have went to a similar college, or to same college, even that from the same town or same state, or same cultural background, seems to it can lead to to those affinity bias where people tend to connect better, and and kind of have groups at work. It's not all bad. It's just if it's done well. It's not all bad if it's effective and not hindering, team culture per se. But sometimes what happens is when we have those cliques at work, we have, when affinity bias kind of takes place, then it creates this insider and outsider contrast, where people who are the insiders, or people who have the information, and they're in the know, right? And then the outsider people wondering like, Okay, what did I miss? I've said that same meeting, but apparently there's something else that was said because there seems to have information that I don't have, right? And that can create a lot of, lot of frustration, but also those who have information start hoarding it and not communicating that with those who need it as well. Well, guess what happened? Then work does not get done effectively because people don't have the tools, resources that they need because it was not communicated. Because that important information may have been left left out, and then making people feel unsupported. So now that we talked about those common communication challenges in the workplace, I want to now let's look at how does that actually impact the team. And I mentioned some bits and pieces here as as we were looking at the common challenges themselves, but I want to kind of go a little deeper here, or maybe give you a full picture how sometimes this starts this ripple effect in a negative way. So when there's no clarity, what happened? People get confused, right? When people get confused, there's no clarity, they don't know what to do next, how to implement what was required of them. They get frustrated when people don't get effective feedback, it's inconsistent feedback. They get frustrated because I'm doing my best here, I don't know what they want from me. Right? I give them everything I want, and I don't know what's well or what's not going well. And then that confusion, that frustration can lead actually to performance issue, where people are like, well, it doesn't matter what I do because they don't care. Right? Employees might start thinking that leaders don't care because the feedback is inconsistent. Or sometimes they might feel like, well, what's the point of putting so much effort? Because the messages that come afterward are, the output, if you want, that they get is confusing at the end. So people kind of give up. They might be there physically, clocking in and out every day of every work day, but they're not there emotionally. Right? They checked out. And you probably heard of, quiet quitting, right? Where they're there, but doing the very bare minimum because they don't feel supported. That is, it's a big problem in the workplace today. So people start feeling confused, with those unclear messages, frustrated by lack of feedback, then it leads to them, having performance issues. And sometimes that leads to interpersonal tension in the workplace. And especially when you think about those silos, those cliques, right? And when affinity bias takes over, people are like, well, I'm not going to talk to so and so because when I ask them, for feedback, I don't always hear what I need to hear, or they send me these very vague emails like they, not really invested, in the project. And then people start avoiding each other. Guess what? Back to the productivity, performance issues. Then that impacts the entire company. It's still impacting the entire team. It's not an individual issue. Now it becomes a collective issue, right? And that is not good. And when all of those happen, the confusion, the frustration, the performance issue, the tension between people, between staff members, guess what? Stress is at high. People start literally dreading going to work. Or if they're working remotely, they clock in and then they're there just like, oh my goodness, I have to brace myself for this meeting that's coming up. And they see an email from as soon as they get notification on the computer for email that came from higher up, literally they start getting palpitations. I've supported individuals who have dealt with that. Or sometimes people, when it's Friday, for example, Friday, Friday they're happy to clock out, and enjoy the weekend. But when Sunday comes, people start feeling sick to the stomach, start having headaches, migraine, nausea, just because of the stress of having to go back to work. That is very sad. Right? Nobody goes and seeks a job because they want to be stressed, or people go and because they want to be productive, they want to earn a living. Yes, but also all of us have this innate, an innate passion, if you want, even. And that's a powerful word, but I believe that a passion to thrive. And so when we find ourselves in places where stress is high and we're no longer satisfied with a job, that is not good. That is not good. And guess what happens? Then there's a high turnover. People start leaving their jobs, not because they didn't like the job, but because the culture itself was not what they expected. Now they're burnt out. Now they're frustrated, and they're not sure, if it's even worth it. Right? So I want you to think about that. Think about maybe for yourself. We'll pause here for a little bit. And I want you to think for yourself, what are some of the communication issues that you encounter at work? and how have they impacted you? And it could be at your current, current job or maybe previous position. But I want you to take a moment and think about that. If you're watching this, feel free to pause. This is a good time to reflect. Feel free to pause. If you're into journaling, feel free to write those things down. Just allow yourself to process that. And then we'll look at some additional solutions here. I know I've talked about some solutions as we went through the common communication communication issues in the workplace. But I want to then look at how do we literally, what are things that can help change the culture of the organization as a whole so that everyone can benefit. Right. It's good when people are individually doing things to improve, their own challenges per se and improve the own work, the workflow and the approach to work. But it's even bigger, more impactful when the entire organization changes, right? Because if the culture changes, guess what? It trickles down in a very, very positive way. So let's dive a little more into some effective solutions for the organization. So what are some tools and strategies here? More tools per se that the organization can put in place in order to reduce those address those common communication challenges and reduce stress for everyone in the workplace. So the first one here is actually active listening training. I know. It's one more training, right? But the point here is that actually 70 to 93% of all communication is nonverbal. So the more we learn, we embrace that and learn to read people, per se, it can actually be effective in reducing the stress in the workplace. And anyone we support individual who might be neurodivergent, this is one tool that actually one strategy or tool that's actually very effective. And with active listening, not only is crucial, but it helps us to fully concentrate on what others are saying, understanding their perspective and responding in a very thoughtful way. And there's actually a lot of evidence, out there that you can research on your own, but a simple Google search will show you that training, like there's training programs that focus on active listening, can actually improve communication effectiveness and interpersonal relationships in the workplace. And it goes from interactive exercises to role playing scenarios and actually having those feedback sessions, right? Working on that feedback so people can improve on what they're already doing. So I really, encourage you, if your organization is not, doing these, that's something to include, to include and to pursue. Talk to your HR, department, talk to your supervisor, ask for support around these things so that we can actually start hearing what people are saying and listening to hear and so listening to respond, because often that's what we do, right? And then when we put the filters of all those language barriers, cultural differences, different communication styles, then that even really not only creates makes the message more blurry, if you want, and then we don't hear each other out in the workplace, which can then lead to more of that frustration and that confusion that we talked about. But also, in addition to the active listening training, communication coaching is also very important. This is where actually what we do and others provide this, provide similar services, is actually working with individuals in the workplace and starting to look at, people might be struggling with, even writing an email. And it's and you might feel like, what's the email? They got this far in their job, they should be able to write an email. But sometimes when emotions are high, when people are overwhelmed, when people don't feel supported, when people don't feel heard or seen at work, crafting a simple email can be very hard. So for communication coaching, we actually teach people, help people to not and be aware of their own emotions, then regulate their own emotions so that they can write in an effective manner, being very professional in the workplace. And sometimes people struggle with speaking up to upper management, and sometimes it's upper management struggling to communicate with the individuals that they support. Sometimes just knowing how to communicate in different situations, presentation skills, those are all part of communication. And then when you get coaching around those things, it actually reduces your stress, right? When you're preparing for those meetings, preparing for those, training and presentation per se, and then help you be more confident, and then help you more assertive. And again, if you know me by now, you should know that, I'm a little nerd when it comes to when it comes to data and it comes to research. But this research out there, this one that I have on this slide is from the Journal of Applied Communication that showed the study that actually said that communication participants in communication skills workshop reported improvement in their ability to express themselves clearly. That's what communication coaching does for you, right? You can help you express yourself clearly and understand others' perspective, and then even manage conflict in the workplace in a constructive manner. Many of us avoid conflict, but there's conflict's part of human life, human interactions, right? But the more we learn to communicate effectively, actually the easier it becomes to address conflict, and then we don't shy away from conflict, we don't run away from it anymore. We actually embrace it because we realize that once we resolve a conflict, it actually helps us attain our goals faster. And it should, many often when done well, it helps us actually connect in the workplace so that we can once understanding ourselves and our coworkers and prevent future problems from happening. So we talked about feedback, how if there's no feedback, if it's inconsistent, that can become a problem. But often when we talk about feedback, we always look at people think about the supervisors providing feedback to the rest of the team. Yes, that's one way to look at it, but there's also feedback in between peers. There's feedback also from the employee being supported, up towards to management, right? So those are things that feedback's all around. And we talked about giving feedback often, and don't always wait for it to be structured. Use even informal feedback, right? And then it's okay to set a schedule from those for those formal feedback when needed. Be consistent and always follow up. Giving feedback and not providing support, giving feedback and not providing resources, giving feedback and not providing the opportunity for the person receiving the feedback to also give feedback is not healthy, right? So those are different ways, many ways that we can look at, we can improve on the feedback. But also, even when we're giving feedback, it's also good, like I mentioned, for staff to be able to give feedback to their leaders. As a leader, as a supervisor, manager, CEO, are you creating an environment where people feel safe enough to give you feedback about policies, procedures, the different projects, or even maybe even give you feedback? And this one might be a little touchy, but give you feedback on your leadership style. Are you creating that kind of environment? If you are, kudos. That's great. That's how you should be. Right. And so one of the tools that sometimes people use in order to give leadership feedback is the 360 feedback reviews. People do that. And then for employees, some employees get performance reviews. Like we said, they're good, but that should not be the only way, right? And it's okay for managers to also get feedback from their subordinates, the people that there's people that are supporting, and helps them, kind of should help them, whether it's for direct reports or even for themselves, actually doing their own self-reflection, self-assessment per se, and then being able to improve. Because honestly, if we don't grow, we die, in the sense where skills die, right? Companies die when there's no growth. And the effective way to grow is always have a time to reflect, and then reflection is part of that feedback, right? If we reflect on things, we can identify what went well, what didn't go so well, where we need to improve, what our next steps can be. That's all feedback, right? And if your company does not have a formal feedback process for leaders, for those in management, I really encourage you to give that a try, and especially for leaders who are here, I really, really encourage you. That's how, honestly, we change the culture of the organization. And when it comes to 360-degree feedback, which often is, like I mentioned, leaders being it's peers and subordinates, giving feedback regarding the leader. Those actions and innovation can lead to significant improvement in leadership effectiveness, communication skills, and job performance. So sometimes we employees might think that, well, they're in leadership and there's nothing I can do about that. And I'm not here to make anybody lose their job. That's not my point. My point is we all need to grow. So if what we're doing is not supporting the people that we intend to support, it's not achieving, it's not helping us achieve the goals that the organization has, then we have to do things differently. And sometimes we might be too close to the issue for us to see it for ourselves, where self-assessment might be, a little skewed per se, because it's just natural, that happens to all of us when we're maybe doing reflection. So it's good to get feedback from others who are impacted by our policies, those who are impacted by the procedures we set in place, those who are impacted by our leadership. So enough on that. Um, but another strategy here is to actually streamline digital communications. Like right now, we talked about that overload, information overload. When we live in this digital age where it's literally, it's everywhere, everything, the emails, it's notification, it's Slacks, it's Teams, all these things buzzing on our phones and our computers all the time. So in order to help us to help ourselves and help our team, help our organization kind of reduce the stress that comes with that, it's very, very good. I encourage you to kind of streamline those digital communications, right? Decide on what channels do you want to use, when you decide on those channels, what are the purpose? Maybe each channel has a purpose so that people are not getting the same message in Teams and Slacks and by email. That becomes too much, too overwhelming, and redundant for no reason, right? Waste of time even. And people are like, oh, yeah, I saw that, and it maybe gets to the point where you might have done this, also in the past, maybe where you see an email, if the first line is similar to what you already saw in a different channel, in a different email, you don't want to read the rest of the email because you assume it's the same information. That's literally how people are trying to manage the information overload. But then when that happens, then some very important information get missed. I remember supporting an individual who actually the someone else in their team was complaining about them not responding to certain emails. Well, I sent this already, I didn't hear from them, and we sent it twice and didn't hear from them. And the individual said, well, I saw the email, it started by addressing someone else. I just assumed that email was for someone else, and I didn't read the rest. Right. So how we craft those messages, it's important as well. But and then when you're choosing, to put some suggestions of platforms for digital communication like Teams, Slack, Monday.com. There's quite a few, but decide on what your, how your team wants to communicate. And then through what we want to have that why, right? The goal that you're trying to achieve, then decide which platform works best. And when we do that, actually, when we do that, it helps, not only increase our productivity, but also, reduce like like these emails that goes in junk mail or we don't read, right? And it helps us be more effective in our work. It helps us be more effective in our communication. So really, really encourage you to do that. Do that for yourself individually, but also, those of us in leadership, create a culture that, where there's systems in place to help people be productive and not, overwhelm people by all the tools that we use. So the last one that I want to, and the last solution that I want to propose here, it's cultural competency training. And I know, probably like people like, well, I went to that training, I checked the box, and that's not got it. Well, when I say training, yes, maybe that's a word we use, but it's beyond just training. We attend the training, but then have support to implement what we learn, and then have a way to track the effectiveness of what we learn and, its implementation per se. Right? When we look at cultural competency training, we're looking at, actually those programs will, aim to enhance, employees' awareness, their knowledge, and their skills related to, cultural diversity and inclusion in the workplace. To know, to fully, and not always fully, because you cannot, honestly, cannot know people fully per se, but it helps kind of enhance that, to know others well, know ourselves and others well, so that we can work well together, right? And then, it's not just going from, talking about cultural sensitivity per se, but, how do we become more adaptable? How do we, take that knowledge of cultural differences and implement it in our communication strategies, so that we can, again, interact effectively with, people in diverse, cultural background. So, but with that too, with that again, it can include that, DEI training, right? Diversity, equity, and diversity, equity, and inclusion training. But it goes beyond that, right? It's beyond, even when we do these trainings, for example, per se, we start helping people even identify who they are themselves. because the more I understand who I am, the easier it is for me to communicate that to others. And then the easier it is for others to know how to support me or even respect those values that I have. Right. So cultural competency, diversity, equity, and inclusion training start with self-awareness, self-discovery. So I really, 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 want to emphasize that. And then another quote here, another, maybe that I should say that I want you to think about. It's that this meta-analysis that was published in the Journal of Applied Psychology found that diversity training programs, including cultural competency training, were actually associated with positive outcomes such as increased awareness of diversity issues, reduced prejudice, and improved intergroup relations. So some of the communications issue we have, some of the, some of the challenges we have with people not being seen, heard, or respected, value in the workplace can be addressed by the cultural competency training. So I know this is a webinar, and I'm going to encourage you though, if you have any questions, I really encourage you to email me. I'm going to share my contact here in the next slide. So thank you again for joining me. Thank you for making time to learn with me. And if I can be, we can be of any support, whether it's, helping with communication coaching or active listening training, cultural competency training, including, diversity, equity, and inclusion training. Please, please, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're here to support you. Thank you.